We've been a part of Church Renewal since 2014, and I used to say that it was like one of the top 5 coolest things I'd experienced as a pastor. Then it became in the top 3, and it's since then become the most impactful thing that's happened in our lives as individuals and as in the life of my family and the life of our church. So we came to the conclusion that the journey of renewal meant going to a place where you actually were part of the solution of renewing other churches. And so we had some connections in Zambia and Ukraine for starters, and we thought, well, let's see if they're interested in being a part of this thing that we'd experienced. Well, they had noticed the difference in us, and they had seen what God had done in our lives around learning to hear God's voice and becoming free and whole, walking in the power of the Spirit, that it wasn't really a hard sell. My wife and I, along with another pastor from our church, Vadim, planned a 2-month trip where we went to several different countries in Africa and then ended in Ukraine. So we were able to also go into Zimbabwe, a little town called Vinga, where national leaders came from the whole country. It blew my mind. I mean, I'm just Tony, and I pastor this church in Northern Canada, but here they are coming because they're hungry to be renewed. I think we all know, the church knows, and pastors are aware of this. They look at their congregations and they see a people that need to be renewed, and they're walking them through a set-free retreat, teach them how to hear God's voice, show them how to walk in freedom. I mean, they're just full-on encounters after encounter after encounter. We walked through the cross session, and there was not a dry eye in the room as they all just came to be a deeper understanding of what Jesus had done for them through the cross. That's part of the journey, and then from there, after about 2 months, we actually were able to go to Ukraine and connect up with Pastor Vadim, and I will let him tell that part of the story.
My personal journey of renewal began at around the same time Tony joined a group of pastors for mentoring. I was on staff team at that time, and remember Tony introducing practices of abiding in Jesus and growing godly character. And as I began to establish those practices in my life, I began to experience renewal. And as I experienced renewal, I began to think about my home country, Ukraine. I'm Ukrainian, and Ukraine has always had a special place in my heart. At around the same time, I got a call from pastor, my friend, Pastor Oleg. He said, I really want to learn more about church renewal. The last time you came for a visit to Ukraine, you talked about hearing God's voice. And when you talked about it, I felt like something grabbed my heart, and I felt like I need that. And so we started meeting together over Zoom, and I began to disciple him. Oleg began to experience renewal for himself as he began to implement those practices into his life. And soon he got to the point where he would disciple his core leadership. And as we were doing it, I experienced great joy, but I always had a desire to have a group of pastors walking through that journey together. I began to pray, and the answer that I got wasn't something that I expected. We felt like the Lord said, you need to go to Ukraine in person. In May 2023, we went to Ukraine despite the ongoing war. We did roundtables, meeting with different pastors, different churches, and our trip culminated with a full set-free weekend. I had to quickly translate set-free retreat material into Russian, the spiritual inventory cards, and so on. As a result, 150 people attended this set-free retreat, including 7 pastors from 7 different churches, representing 3 different denominations, including a rabbi of a Messianic Jewish community. Coming out of Ukraine, what was special to me is that 8 pastors signed up for weekly mentoring. And this became the very first Russian-speaking group of pastors. I remember one pastor whose name is Anton sharing how impactful the lesson on journaling was for him. And Anton, like many other pastors, has to work full-time in order to support his ministry. So he's an IT person, IT specialist. And so he says, I never thought that you can just join a chat room with God. And he's right there sending you messages. And he uses emojis. And last night, I got a smiley face from him. On a personal note, I really believe that the next country where it should go is Russia. As many of you know, there's a great deal of hostility between the two countries, and the sad thing is that even pastors are not immune from becoming bitter and unforgiving to each other. And so I really believe that Church Renewal will be instrumental in bringing reconciliation between these two countries. And that reconciliation, that renewal begins with the church.